At last, they stood at the crooked wooden gate of Fear Not's little house. "All right, friend," said Alois, brushing her hands on her cloak. "This is where we part. But you must come in." Fear Not pleaded. "You've come so far with me, you should meet my family." "Oh no," Alois chuckled, stepping back. "Families don't usually like me. I upset the furniture. They'll love you. You're my friend. Which is exactly why I won't ruin it." She reached into her sleeve and pressed a small, strange token into his hand. "Give this to your father." "What is it?" "You'll know. Goodbye, dear brave friend." And just like that she vanished. No sooner had Fear Not turned toward the house than a flurry of footsteps came crashing down the hill. A voice screeched. "Fear not. It's you, it's really you. Come quick, hurry." "She fainted the moment she heard you were gone." "Who fainted?" "Lila Lydia Lio, whatever her name is, your sweetheart." Fear Not's eyes widened. "My sweetheart?" Inside, a girl lay motionless, her hand on her heart. The moment his shadow touched her cheek, her eyes fluttered open. "Fear not," she whispered. "What have you done to me? I don't know you. But I know you. And the moment I thought I'd lost you, I shuddered. I shivered. That's it. That's what it was." Fear Not blinked. "You felt afraid." "I felt. That's what fear is, isn't it? Love so big it hurts. You did it, you taught me." And so, the boy who had journeyed to learn what fear was, discovered it on his own doorstep. He married his sweetheart, yes, she had a name, and yes, it suited her, and he never left again. Mr. M told me that story when I was just a beanpole of a child. I didn't understand the half of it. Not until much later. You see, stories aren't just stories. People stitch their pasts with them, stitch their selves with them. They explain the unexplainable, justify the unjust, and whisper hope into tomorrow. But yesterday, I forgot one. I was halfway through telling how the sun and moon had a race around the world and poof. Gone. My mind emptied like a leaky kettle. What use is a storyteller with no stories? I asked myself. So I did what any fool would do, I gave away our supper to a beggar. Yes, our supper. Fools see this as foolish. Wise men nod and mutter, wise. A fool eats his last turnip. A wise man buries it. And everyone knows, beggars are never what they seem. He was definitely a beggar. I was definitely hungry. "Got a drop of water?" he asked. "For what?" "For soup." "Stone soup." "Stone soup? Ridiculous." I gave him the water anyway. And lit a fire. He dropped a pebble in the pot. Stared like it was gold. "Needs salt," he said. "Oh, and maybe a dash of carrot? Perhaps a splash of bone broth." Bit by bit, he cajoled everything from me. And when the soup was done, it was glorious. Of course, the royal cook thought otherwise. Dragged me before the king. "Your punishment," said the king. "Tell me a story every night for a year. And for each story I'll give you a crown. But if you run out," growled the cook, boiling oil. Naturally. And so, I told stories. Tales of invisible tigers, dancing moons, and maps that drew themselves. A golden year passed, each night another crown, another story. My belly plumped. My heart bloomed. My wife, soft as marshmallow in the morning sun. And then the final night came. I woke up and nothing. My mind was a snowfield. The oil boiled. My wife held my hand. And then a knock. A visitor. The beggar. "I come to play dice," he said, jiggling a pouch of 364 gold coins. "I've got none left," I stammered. "Then wager something better." I did. I shouldn't have. I lost everything. Even her. She was taken. I was turned into a flea. Yes. A flea. The beggar skipped off with me clenched between his thumb and finger, while I itched and shivered in his pocket. The world looks different as a flea. Every crumb a boulder. Every whisper a roar. I watched kitchens boil, thieves cheat, and people scratch themselves silly. Eventually, the beggar took me back to the palace. And as the king roared for his final story, I leapt from the beggar's coat back into my own body midair. Landed in the soup. "Who dares interrupt my story hour?" thundered the king. "I do," I said, dripping broth. "I have no story to tell." But then I told what had happened. I told about the beggar, the dice, the fleahood, the oil. The court wept. The cook sobbed. The queen handed me tissues. "That," said the king, wiping his nose, "was the finest story I ever heard." That beggar? He gave me a story when I had none. He made me one. As for my wife, well, she was under a spell. She chased the beggar and never came back. And the cook? He kept the stone. Now every beggar gets a steaming bowl of soup, no questions asked. So yes, stories vanish. But they come back, too. And the best place by the fire? Still kept for the storyteller. Now, you might think that was the end. A pot of soup, a lost wife, a crown, or two good night, tuck in. But stories don't stop when you want them to. They wait in corners. They hide under teacups. They tick like clocks behind walls. And that very night, yes, the one with the soup and the flea, I heard another tale. It wandered in like smoke through a window. It was about a child. A child born on the day the stars blinked twice. A child so lucky, birds built nests in his pockets and frogs asked for autographs. They called him the Luck Child. Now, it was foretold by the royal chicken, don't question the chicken, that this child would grow up and take the king's crown. The king, being particularly fond of his hat and not fond of children, decided to do what cowards do. He ordered the baby tossed into the river. Wrapped in silk, mind you. He wasn't cruel. But the river had opinions of its own. It carried the child down, 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 until he was fished out by a miller and his wife, who had long since given up on having babies of their own. They named him Thistle. Because that's what they were picking when they found him. Thistle grew up with hair full of starlight and a knack for walking away from trouble like it was a party he didn't like. Every time the king tried to get rid of him again through wolves, witches, or flaming cheese wheels, it backfired. Wolves brought him lunch. Witches gave him cloaks. The cheese melted just in time. The king howled, "Why won't he perish?" The royal chicken clucked ominously, "Because he's lucky." So the king did what all desperate monarchs do. He wrote a letter. "To my cousin the ogre. Kindly eat this boy. He's inconvenient." He sealed the letter, handed it to Thistle, and said, "Run along, won't you?" But on the way to the ogre's castle, Thistle took a nap under a tree. And trees, well, trees listen. A whisper came on the wind. "You shouldn't deliver that letter." So Thistle, not being stupid, opened it. He frowned. Then smiled. Then, using ink from a squid who owed him a favor, he rewrote it. Dear cousin the ogre. Please treat this boy as your heir. Feed him jam, give him gold, and marry him to your clever daughter. Love, the king. Well, that changed everything. The ogre, a retired man-eater with a soft spot for embroidery, welcomed Thistle like lost royalty. Gave him his best gold-plated forks, the largest bed, and yes, the clever daughter. They were wed under a moon shaped like a spoon. Thistle sent the king a thank you card, out of politeness. The king turned purple. He declared war on ogres, jam, and luck itself. Didn't matter. Thistle returned years later, riding a silver donkey and wearing an enchanted coat of no regrets. The people cheered. The royal chicken nodded. The king fled. Thistle took the crown not out of greed, but because it looked lonely. And what happened to the ogre? He became minister of tea. The daughter became queen of cleverness. And Thistle ruled kindly, always setting an extra seat at the table. For luck. Because luck, like stories, returns to those who keep a place for it. Disgusting little wretch, the king had muttered in the night, gnawing a chicken leg like it owed him money. He survives the river, the wolves, the witches, and now he's a forger too. Forger. Fair child of luck, scribbling royal lies with squid ink and courtesy. How dare he? How very dare he? The king's sisters, wild-eyed and silk-cloaked, were already sharpening knives the next morning set to slice the boy into puzzle pieces before sunrise. But Thistle, fair and unbothered, had already left. Refreshed and full of dreams, he rose with the dawn and set off without a map, a plan, or a single doubt. The castle rose ahead of him, as if it had grown overnight just to be found. I bring a letter from His Majesty, he called to the guard at the drawbridge. A letter from the king, he called again, to the doorman in the marble hall. In he walked, past columns and candelabras, straight into the royal garden, where the queen sat beside her clever daughter, sipping something gold. And then, boom! Not an explosion. A gaze. She saw him. He saw her. And that was it. No questions. No blushes. Just that deep, clanging sound of destiny, boom. Love, like a lightning bolt in a velvet box. The queen blinked and blinked again, her eyes scanning the letter over and over. Well, gracious me, she murmured. This cannot be right. But there it was, a royal seal, a royal order. Marry the boy. Shower him in gold. No take-backs. Boo to the king, cried the queen. A hiss and a boo, giggled the princess. Meanwhile, the king far from the castle rode home in his carriage, hands clasped, lips curled like bad fruit. 1,000 pieces, he whispered gleefully. Split like firewood by now. But then bells. Bells on the wind. Bells on the hilltops. Bells ringing joy. And when he reached the palace gates, the battlements were strewn with banners. There, on the highest balcony, his daughter, her arm wrapped around him. The boy. Alive. Married. Glowing with joy. No, croaked the king. No, no, how? You ordered it, said the queen sweetly. Right there in ink. Marry him or else. I said pieces. You said please. But. They're very happy, the queen added. He's quite charming. I thought you'd seen a fortune teller, the king growled. They said he'd steal my crown. Father, said the princess, glowing like moonlight, we're so grateful. Yes, your majesty, said Thistle. At first, I feared you were a cruel tyrant, a blight upon the poor, a man with a sword for a heart. But now, you have made me, a humble miller's son, your heir, and your son-in-law. The king blinked. The queen coughed politely. And the king, clawing for one last loophole, said. But wait. The golden feather. The what? Said Thistle. The golden feather from the griffin, barked the king. No man may marry my daughter without it. But I'm already married to her. Then unmarry. It's tradition. Is this true? Asked Thistle, turning to the queen. She shrugged. It is a very rare feather. Very well, said Thistle, already tying his boots. I'll fetch it. Oh no, said the queen. Oh no, whispered the princess. No one comes back, they said together. Then I suppose I'll be the first. And off he went, the luck child, with nothing but courage in his chest and a riddle on his tongue. To the griffin, he said. To the griffin. It became a direction when he had none. A promise when he had no clue. On and on he went, until the green fell away to ash, and the air turned black and brittle. He crossed into the deserts of thirst, the wastes of shadow. One day, he came upon a lake so still it had forgotten how to ripple. No fish stirred. No birds cried. A man stood in a boat. Fair boatman, called Thistle. Will you take me across? I go across, said the man, and I return. Always. With you or without you. Then I'll ride with you. As you like. But I go to the griffin. I know. Halfway across, they saw lights under the water, blue, red, gold. Jewels, said the ferryman. They shine for the dead. None bring them back. I might, said Thistle. If you do, said the ferryman, eyes like hollow moons, tell me why I am cursed to row forever. No rest. No end. He sighed. So many before you. All bold. All loud. All bones now. Then I'll be different, said Thistle. I won't end in the griffin's belly. From the shore came a whisper. From the hills, a breath. And then, who's there? Came a voice like old leaves. Oh dear, said the luck child. Oh dear, said the voice. What are you doing here? It asked. What about your golden feather? Thistle finished, his voice light yet steady, not betraying the slightest hint of worry. He stood on the edge of the lake, gazing into the shadows where the ferryman's boat had stopped. I'm after it, he said. The golden feather from the griffin. The voice in the dark chuckled, a sound that seemed to drift down from the mountain, low and echoing. It felt ancient, like a memory too distant to hold. The griffin's feather, you say? The voice was closer now, almost to his ear. And what will you trade for such a treasure? I've nothing but my promise, Thistle said, stepping forward. And my word is a bond stronger than gold. Your word. The voice seemed amused, but it lingered in the air, waiting. Thistle looked toward the ferryman, who merely nodded and said nothing. The boat rocked gently in the still waters, a faint glow reflecting from its surface, like 1,000 lost souls trapped beneath. My word, yes, Thistle insisted. And my courage. I'm here to face what none before me dared. The whispering laugh drifted around him like mist. Then, the voice spoke again, this time with a seriousness that made the air itself grow cold. Then walk forward, brave child of luck. Walk forward into the dark, where even shadows fear to tread. With that, the voice fell silent. Thistle took a deep breath, then stepped away from the ferryman's boat, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and dread. As he walked, the landscape changed before him. The green of the world faded to bone white, and the sky above grew heavy, as though the heavens themselves were watching. He crossed into the shadowlands, where even the sun seemed afraid to shine. The ground beneath his feet was soft, like rotting wood, and the air smelled of ancient dust. "What is this place?" Thistle whispered to himself, yet the wind answered him, not with words, but with a deep, unsettling groan. He continued, undeterred, until the ground began to rise, jagged peaks reaching up like the broken teeth of some forgotten beast. In the distance, he could see a dark figure perched on one of the peaks, wings spread wide. It was the griffin. Thistle's heart pounded, but he didn't falter. He had come this far, there was no turning back now. Slowly, he climbed toward the summit, his every step guided by the strange, unshakable feeling of destiny. As he neared the top, the griffin turned its piercing gaze upon him. Its feathers shimmered with an ethereal glow, and its beak curled into a smile, sharp and knowing. "You are not like the others," the griffin rumbled, its voice like thunder rolling through the mountains. "No," Thistle said firmly, "I'm not." The griffin chuckled. "Many have sought my feather. Many have fallen before me. But none have come with such certainty." It looked Thistle over, its golden eyes narrowing. "You are here for the feather, but what will you do with it once you have it?" "I'll keep my promise," Thistle answered, his voice steady. "I'll bring it back." The griffin's laughter echoed through the mountains like a storm, and for a moment, Thistle wondered if he had made a terrible mistake. But then the creature's eyes softened, and it lowered its wings. "Very well," the griffin said, its tone now strangely kind. "The feather is yours. But remember, its power is not to be taken lightly. It will change you, as it has changed all those before you." "I will accept whatever comes," Thistle said, stepping forward. The griffin stretched out one wing, and from the very tip of the feathers, a single, golden feather floated down into Thistle's hand. It glowed with a warm, fiery light. Thistle held it with reverence, feeling the power humming through it. He didn't know exactly what lay ahead, but he knew one thing: he had kept his word. And now, he would return. As he turned to leave, the griffin's voice called after him. "Remember, Luckchild," it said. "Even the brightest of feathers may cast the darkest of shadows." Thistle didn't look back. He had made his choice, and he would see it through. With the golden feather in hand, he began his descent from the mountain, the weight of the world upon him. But no matter the burden, no matter the trials ahead, Thistle walked on. For he knew his luck had not run out. The boy, Leo, ran off with the wind in his hair, his heart light with excitement. The stories told around the fire had always been so full of wonder and mystery. A giant with no heart? Impossible, surely. But the curiosity that burned in his chest wouldn't let him rest. He had to see it for himself. He raced through the castle halls, down the winding staircases, past the guards who only waved at him with tired smiles, until he found the door, a heavy, ancient thing, covered in moss, locked with iron. "Hello," Leo called softly, pressing his ear to the door. "Are you there?" From the other side, a deep, rumbly sound echoed back to him, almost like a growl. "Who's there?" the voice asked, its tone surprisingly soft for something so massive. "I'm Leo," the boy replied boldly, though his heart pounded in his chest. The youngest of the king's sons. I want to see you. There was a long silence before the door creaked open, revealing a giant, hunched in a dark cell. His face was hidden in shadow, his eyes gleaming like molten gold in the dim light. You've come to see the giant with no heart, the giant asked, his voice thick and slow, as though it was a great effort to speak. Leo nodded, a mix of awe and fear rising in him. The giant chuckled, but it was a sad sound. No heart, no peace, he murmured, his voice tinged with bitterness. What you see is not a giant of strength, but a giant of sorrow. My heart was taken from me long ago. I have no place for it, and so I hid it away where it would never trouble me again. Where is it? Leo asked, his curiosity stronger than his fear now. What happened to it? The giant's golden eyes glinted in the darkness. It is lost to me. Taken by my own folly, by my own pride. But even giants can change, he added, his voice lowering. There is still a way, though it may cost more than you imagine. Leo's heart raced. What must I do? He asked, his voice full of determination. You must find the heart, the giant said, his voice trembling. It is hidden deep within the mountains, in the lair of the last dragon. Only with that heart can I be whole again. Only then can I truly live. Leo swallowed hard. This was no small task. The dragon's lair was a place no one returned from. But there was a fire in Leo's spirit, a determination that could not be snuffed out. He couldn't leave the giant here, alone, and lost to the world. He wouldn't. I'll find it, Leo said with confidence. I'll bring you your heart. The giant's eyes softened, a flicker of something like hope in them. You are brave, little prince, the giant said. But remember, the heart is not just an object. It holds all the emotions I denied, all the feelings I buried. It may not be what you expect. Be careful, for the heart can be a dangerous thing. I'll be careful, Leo promised, turning to leave the cell. I'll return with your heart, and we'll see you free. And so, Leo set off, leaving the castle behind, following a path that led deep into the mountains. The air grew colder, and the shadows of trees seemed to reach out to him like fingers. But he pressed on, driven by a fierce sense of purpose. Days turned into nights, and Leo's resolve never wavered. Along the way, he met travelers who whispered of the dragon, of its fiery breath and the fury it unleashed upon those who dared approach. But Leo didn't falter. He was determined to save the giant and return to the kingdom with the heart that would end his sorrow. Finally, after a long and treacherous journey, Leo stood before the dragon's lair, a cave deep within the mountain, the entrance dark and ominous. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. There, in the heart of the cave, stood the dragon, its scales shimmering with fire and ice. Its eyes, glowing like embers, fixed on Leo as he entered. You seek the heart, the dragon's voice boomed, shaking the very ground beneath Leo's feet. I do, Leo said, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at his insides. The giant has no heart. I will return it to him. The dragon studied Leo for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well, brave prince, the dragon said. But know this, the heart is not something you can simply take. You must prove you are worthy. Only then will I give it to you. Leo's heart skipped a beat, but he nodded. I will do whatever it takes. And so, the dragon led Leo through a series of trials, tests of strength, courage, and wit. Each challenge was harder than the last, but Leo's determination only grew stronger. He faced them all without hesitation, for he knew that the giant's heart was the key to ending the suffering, to giving the creature a chance at redemption. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the dragon presented Leo with the heart, a glowing, pulsing thing, filled with fire and light. "Take it," the dragon said. "And remember, the heart is not just for the giant. It is for you, too." Leo took the heart, feeling its warmth in his hands. He bowed to the dragon, then turned to leave. When he returned to the giant, he placed the heart back into the giant's chest, watching as the creature slowly straightened, his body filling with life once more. The giant's eyes shone with a light that hadn't been there before. "Thank you, Leo," the giant said, his voice now full of warmth. "You've not only saved me, but you've freed us both." And so, the giant was no longer a terror, but a guardian, his heart restored. Leo returned to the kingdom, a hero, and the giant's tale became one of redemption, teaching all who heard it that even the coldest hearts could find warmth again. As for Leo, he became known as the prince who restored not just a giant, but a world of possibilities. And so, they all lived happily ever after. But of course, we all know that stories like hearts are never truly finished. The giant nodded, his cold eyes softened just a fraction. "Very well, Leo. You have my word. No tricks. No traps." Leo's heart felt heavy as he stepped closer to the stone garden, his feet crunching on the brittle ground. Each statue he passed was a frozen echo of a soul, trapped in time and turned to stone by the heartless giant. But still, he pressed forward, because there was something he knew deep inside: the giant wasn't beyond saving. "I didn't come here for vengeance," Leo said quietly. "I came to find you, to see you free, to understand what happened." The giant's eyes flickered with something like regret, a shadow passing over his face. "You came to learn that sometimes, even a giant with no heart can be misunderstood. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but the curse, it grew stronger each year. And I could no longer tell who was friend, who was foe. I lost myself in the darkness of it all." "I know what that feels like," Leo said, his voice softening. "I trusted, and I was betrayed. But trust can heal. It can help you remember who you are." The giant's great head lowered. "And who am I now, Leo?" Leo stood in the garden, his eyes scanning the stone statues, all those turned to stone because of the giant's magic, because of the curse he'd placed on himself out of fear and anger. But something sparked inside him. "You are still the giant who once had a heart," Leo said firmly. "You can find it again. We can undo this. I will help you." The giant rumbled in a low growl, his body shifting uneasily, as though unsure of himself. "And how can you help me? I have no heart left, Leo. Not one that will beat again." Leo didn't flinch. He stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward the giant. "You do have a heart. It may be buried deep, it may be lost, but I believe it's still there. We just have to find it, together." For the first time in a long while, the giant didn't pull away. Instead, he allowed Leo to stand close. I never thought it could be this simple," the giant muttered, his voice shaking. "I thought I was beyond redemption." "You're not," Leo said with a smile, his eyes bright. "None of us are. You may have turned others to stone, but you don't have to stay that way. Neither of us do." With those words, the giant closed his eyes, and for a long while, there was only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves. And then slowly the stone in the giant's chest began to crack. A faint, warm glow filled the cracks, and the giant gasped, his chest heaving. Leo stepped back as the giant's form began to shift. The stone surrounding him crumbled like dust in the wind, revealing the giant's true form, large and mighty, but now free of the coldness that had once bound him. "I feel it," the giant whispered, touching his chest where the stone had once been. "I feel my heart again. I remember." The prince nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. "You're not a monster," he said softly. "You never were. You were just lost." The giant's face softened, the hardness of years and cruelty replaced with the first taste of true peace in his soul. He looked at Leo with a quiet gratitude. "Thank you, Leo. You've saved me from myself." Leo smiled, the weight in his heart lifting as they stood in the garden, where the stone statues began to return to life, each person freed from the curse. And so, the heartless giant was no more. In his place stood a creature with a heart, one that beat strong with redemption, kindness, and the wisdom of a life reformed. "Now," Leo said, with a warm smile, "let's undo what we've done." And together, the prince and the giant walked back toward the kingdom, no longer enemies but allies, with a future full of hope and possibility. The path ahead would not be easy, but as long as they were together, it would be a path worth walking. And they lived, in the end, with no more stone and no more fear. They lived happily, and with hearts full of the knowledge that even the darkest of curses could be undone by kindness, trust, and a little bit of courage. The giant's voice trembled with an edge of panic, a stark contrast to his usual booming tone. Leo stood before him, holding the egg, the heart like a fragile treasure, his eyes steady, though the weight of the moment pressed down on him. "You'll break it, will you?" Leo asked softly, his voice calm despite the giant's towering rage. "Do you think that would fix anything? That would make everything right?" The giant's great eyes flickered with something dangerous, something wild. "I'm not afraid of breaking hearts anymore," he growled. "Not even my own. It's too late for me. Too late for any of us. You've come all this way, thinking you can fix what's been broken, but you can't." Leo didn't waver. "I can't fix everything, but I can give you a choice. You can let me help you, or you can stay locked in your own misery. You've already lost so much. You don't have to lose your heart, too." The giant stood silent for a long while, his massive frame looming over Leo, the firelight flickering off his stone-like features. He was as cold as he'd ever been, but something had shifted, something in his heart, buried deep beneath years of bitterness and sorrow. "I don't deserve it," the giant muttered, his voice softer now, quieter. "I don't deserve a second chance." Leo stepped closer, still holding the egg in his hands. "You don't deserve to be punished forever. None of us do. We all make mistakes. But that doesn't mean we can't learn from them, change." The giant took a hesitant step forward, his eyes never leaving the egg. "And what if I can't change? What if the things I've done are too far gone?" "There's always a way forward," Leo said, his tone gentle but firm. "But you have to trust that you're worth it. You have to trust that it's not too late." The giant looked at Leo, a long, silent gaze that seemed to weigh the boy's words, like the world itself hung on that moment. Finally, the giant sighed. "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I thought if I kept my heart hidden, I could never feel the pain again. But all I've done is make more pain. More hurt." Leo nodded slowly, understanding. "Then it's time to let it go. Time to heal." With trembling hands, Leo stepped closer to the giant and placed the egg in his outstretched palm. The giant held it carefully, cradling it like the fragile thing it was. His hands, once so destructive, now seemed almost gentle. The egg, as if responding to the giant's touch, began to crack. The sound was soft, almost imperceptible, but in that moment, something changed. The heart, the long-lost heart of the giant, emerged from the egg, a beating, pulsing organ, warm and alive. The light from the fire flickered over it, and for the first time in a long while, the giant felt the sensation of something other than cold and hunger. "I can feel it," the giant said, his voice thick with emotion. "I can feel, again." Leo smiled softly. "Now, you can begin again." For a moment, the giant stood still, the warmth of his heart filling him up, piece by piece. Slowly, the hardness in his features began to soften, the weight of years of self-imposed isolation lifting like a cloud that had been hanging too long in the sky. "I don't know if I can be what I once was," the giant said, his voice filled with quiet wonder. "But I can try." Leo nodded, placing a hand on the giant's massive foot. "You don't have to be what you were. You can be something better." The giant looked down at the boy, his eyes filled with gratitude, and for the first time, a small smile tugged at his lips. "Thank you, Leo. You've given me a second chance." "And you've given me a friend," Leo replied with a wink. "Now, let's make sure no one else has to suffer because of your mistakes. Together." The giant nodded, his heart stronger than it had ever been. Together. And so, with the giant's heart restored, they left the cave behind. Leo, the prince who had once been betrayed, now walked with a companion who had been lost but was found again. They ventured back toward the kingdom, where the giant would find his place in a world that had once feared him but would learn to understand him in time. For the first time, both of them heart in hand were ready to face the future, whatever it might bring. And they walked forward, together, into a new chapter of their lives. Soldier stopped and joined in with the rhythm, tapping his feet to the beat of the drum. The soldier, with his newfound tune, added his melodic whistle, and together they created a music unlike any other. They played and laughed, the soldier's heart lightened by the joy of the moment, despite the long, lonely road he had traveled. As they finished their impromptu performance, the old man smiled, his eyes twinkling with gratitude. "You've got a fine whistle, soldier," he said. "I've nothing to give, but I'll tell you this: your tune will make you a fortune, if you keep it. Keep playing that, and the world will reward you." The soldier, though he had no idea what the old man meant, thanked him and continued on his way, his whistle carrying him farther down the path. As he walked, he couldn't help but notice how his tune seemed to echo around him, drawing attention from distant travelers, from villagers, and even from the birds in the trees. The sound was rich, warm, like a melody woven from sunlight and rain. Soon, as he ventured deeper into the forest, the soldier found himself at the edge of a great city. The gates were grand, and the streets were lined with golden shops, but there was an air of sadness hanging over the town. The soldier entered the city, curious, when he was immediately greeted by a town crier who, seeing the soldier's strange whistle, waved him over. "Come! Come!" the crier shouted. "The king seeks someone with a voice like that. He has heard of a rare talent, and he will pay handsomely for anyone who can soothe his troubled heart." Intrigued, the soldier followed the crier to the castle, where the king sat upon his throne, his face a mask of worry and sorrow. "I have been plagued by nightmares, soldier," the king said, his voice heavy with years of sleeplessness. "I cannot find rest, no matter what I do. My dreams are full of darkness, and I fear for my mind. Perhaps I can help, your majesty, the soldier said, his tuneless whistle now a melody that filled the air around them, a soft, sweet sound. The king, skeptical at first, listened, and soon his body began to relax, his breathing slowed, the tension in his brow easing. "What is this magic?" the king asked in astonishment, a glimmer of hope rising in his eyes. "It is no magic, your majesty," the soldier said humbly, "but the gift of music, given freely. A gift I was fortunate enough to receive on my journey." The king, moved beyond words, offered the soldier gold, jewels, and land. "Take whatever you wish, soldier. You have restored my peace, and for that, you deserve everything I can give." But the soldier, with a smile, declined. "I seek only a place to rest and a place to call my own, your majesty. A simple home, where I can share my tune and my tale with others." The king, impressed by the soldier's humility, granted his request, and in time, the soldier found himself settled in a small cottage on the outskirts of the kingdom. There, he lived contentedly, playing his whistle for the townsfolk, sharing his music, and telling the story of his journey, the journey that had taught him not just about the power of a good tune, but also about kindness, humility, and the value of simple gifts given freely. And as the years passed, the soldier's music never faltered. It grew in richness, in depth, in meaning. His whistle became a symbol of hope, of joy, and of the promise that no matter how far one travels, or how lost one feels, there is always something beautiful to be found along the way. And in the end, the soldier's story became a tale passed down through generations, a story of a man who began with nothing but a whistle and a heart full of kindness, and who found a way to bring peace to a troubled world. The soldier lived to a ripe old age, and when the time came for him to pass on, he left behind a legacy that would never be forgotten. His name was etched into the hearts of the people, his music echoing through the streets, and his story forever told by those who gathered by the fire, listening to the storytellers of the land. And so, my friends, the soldier's tale lives on, as all good stories do. Aim of cards, do you? The soldier entered the grand hall, its once lavish decorations now faded and broken, the air thick with an eerie stillness. His boots echoed on the cold, stone floor, and his ruby whistle gleamed faintly in the dim light. Suddenly, a voice, low and raspy, came from the shadows. "A visitor, is it? A man with a whistle and a sack, what brings you here, soldier?" The soldier turned, his eyes scanning the room, but he saw no one. Then, in a corner, a shadow detached itself from the gloom and began to materialize into a tall, thin figure, draped in dark robes. Its eyes gleamed with an unnatural, fiery red light. "I hear you want to play a game of cards," the figure crooned, a sly smile curling on its lips. "But know this, our games are not for the faint of heart. If you lose more than just a hand. You lose your soul." The soldier, undeterred, stepped further into the room. "I've played a fair share of games, and I've won my fair share of fortunes," he replied with a grin. "But I'll play your game, if you're up for it." The figure let out a low, sinister laugh, its voice reverberating through the walls. "Very well, soldier. We shall play, and may the stakes be high. But remember this, there's always a price." A table appeared in the middle of the room, a gleaming deck of cards resting on it. The soldier, with a wink, sat down across from the shadowy figure. The cards were shuffled, the sound sharp and quick, and the game began. The soldier played his cards carefully, his eyes sharp and calculating, but the devilish figure across from him was no easy opponent. Each hand was more intense than the last, and with every card dealt, the tension grew thicker in the air. Hours passed, and the room grew colder. The soldier's mind raced as he thought of the consequences of losing. But no matter how the game turned, he never faltered, his fingers nimbly moving the cards, his mind focused. At last, the soldier saw an opening. The devilish figure's expression shifted, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing its face. With a sly smile, the soldier played his final card. "Checkmate," the soldier said, his voice firm and triumphant. The figure froze, its fiery eyes burning with rage. You've won," it hissed. "But know this, mortal, the price for victory here is steep. The devil doesn't forget a debt." The soldier, unfazed, stood up, brushing the dust from his trousers. "I've no need to worry about that," he said with a grin, his ruby whistle gleaming brightly. "For I never intend to lose." With that, the devilish figure dissolved into smoke, leaving nothing behind but the faint scent of sulfur. The soldier looked around at the once grand palace, now crumbling in the aftermath of his victory. But the game was not yet over, and the soldier knew that his journey was far from complete. With his sack on his shoulder, his whistle at his lips, and a smile on his face, he stepped out of the palace and into the daylight. The road ahead was uncertain, but the soldier had learned something valuable: there is power in every game, every choice, and every story we tell. And with his heart light and his courage strong, he knew that whatever came next, he would face it with the same steady hand that had guided him through all his adventures. And so the soldier continued his journey, the echo of his ruby whistle ringing out behind him, a symbol of triumph and the adventures yet to come. Looks at the head that you should worry. The small creature, dressed in tattered black robes, stood at the foot of the sickbed, staring up at the fevered boy. The priest, still murmuring incantations, didn't notice the creature's presence, nor did the family. But the soldier, now well accustomed to the strange and magical, narrowed his eyes. "Who are you?" the soldier asked, his voice low and stern. The small creature turned to him, its eyes gleaming with an unsettling red light. "Ah, the man of the hour. I have watched you for many years, soldier. You've won your games, claimed your wealth, and your happiness, but fate is fickle, is it not? Your boy is ill, and perhaps it's your turn to face the consequences of your past." The soldier's hand instinctively reached for his whistle, the one that had brought him so much fortune. But now, it seemed like nothing more than a small trinket in the face of such dire news. "What do you want?" the soldier demanded. "I want nothing," the creature said with a crooked grin. "But you, soldier, have lived with the consequences of your actions all these years. Your games with devils, your bargains with fate, none of that comes without a price. And now the price is here, your son's life hangs in the balance." The soldier stood tall, his mind racing. "No, not my son. I've come too far to let him suffer for my past." The small creature tilted its head, its grin widening. "Then you must make a choice. The price is steep, as always. A trade must be made." The soldier's heart pounded in his chest. He had faced countless trials, but this was different. His family, his son, was at stake. He looked to the boy, pale and cold, the priests murmuring useless prayers around him. The creature stepped forward, holding out a hand as if to seal the bargain. "Do you accept the price, soldier? You can save your son, but know this: the price will not be easy. One life must be given for another. It is the way of things." The soldier's eyes darkened. He had already given so much, but to sacrifice his son, the choice was unbearable. "How much?" the soldier asked through gritted teeth. "Not much, just what you hold most dear," the creature replied, its voice full of malevolent joy. The soldier clenched his fists, the weight of the decision sinking in. He had lost his heart, his youth, and so much more over the years, but could he give up the only thing that mattered most to him now? The soldier hesitated, the room growing colder with each passing second. His wife, standing beside him, gripped his arm, her eyes filled with a mixture of hope and fear. And in that moment, the soldier understood he had already lost so much, but to lose his son would be the final blow. "Take me," the soldier said, his voice shaking but resolute. "Take my life, my soul, whatever price you ask, but let my son live." The creature's grin grew wider, and it stepped forward, placing a cold, bony hand on the soldier's chest. "Very well," it said, its voice a whisper of finality. "Your soul, for your son's life. It is a fair trade, soldier." With a sudden, sharp pain, the soldier felt his life begin to slip away, like the last breath of winter. The world around him blurred, and he fell to his knees, watching as the fever that had claimed his son suddenly lifted. The boy's skin returned to a healthy glow, and the priests, confused, found themselves staring in awe at the miraculous recovery. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the small creature vanished into thin air, leaving nothing but the faint scent of sulfur behind. The soldier's body crumpled to the ground, his soul slipping away as promised. His wife screamed in horror, but the boy, now fully awake and restored, climbed from his bed, smiling as if nothing had ever happened. The soldier's spirit, now detached from his earthly body, watched from afar. He could see his family, his wife and son, in the warmth of their home, living the life he had fought for. But he knew it was not meant to last. He had made the ultimate sacrifice. The devils had taken his soul, but his son, his legacy, had been saved. The soldier's final act of love and bravery was a tale that would live on, passed down through generations, as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the heart's strength could conquer all, even the most terrifying of bargains. And so, in the end, the soldier's whistle still echoed through the halls of the castle, a symbol of his courage, his sacrifice, and the stories that would carry his memory for years to come. Whistle, the sound echoing through the grand halls of his castle. The world outside buzzed with life, all of it untouched by death. People lived on, unmarked by time, free from the threat of their inevitable end. The soldier, now revered as the miracle man, could not help but feel a strange unease as he watched the world around him. People laughed and played, enjoying their lives with a vigor never seen before, but beneath it all, something was missing. The fear, the drive, the urgency that had once defined humanity had evaporated. Days turned into weeks, and the soldier grew restless. He had everything he could ever want: wealth, fame, and the adoration of countless people. But it wasn't enough. He watched as those he had saved became complacent, as if life had lost its meaning. There were no funerals, no mourning, nothing to mark the passing of time. The world seemed stagnant, frozen in a moment without the natural cycle of life and death. One evening, as the soldier sat alone in his palace, staring out at the horizon, a familiar figure appeared at the door. "Are you satisfied?" the figure asked, its voice as cold as it had always been. The soldier turned to face death, now free from the sack and looking as powerful and inevitable as ever. "I have everything," the soldier replied, his voice heavy with resignation. "But it's not enough. Something is wrong. The world feels wrong. Death took a step closer, its eyes piercing through the soldier. You have stopped the flow of life, but in doing so, you have also stopped its meaning. You have made everyone eternal, but eternity without change, without an end, is an eternity without purpose. The soldier stood up, his heart heavy. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I could stop suffering, stop death. But now, I see. You're right. Death nodded. Life is precious because it is fleeting. It is the only thing that gives meaning to the choices we make, to the love we feel, to the battles we fight. You have taken that away. The soldier felt the weight of his actions, the consequences of his meddling with the natural order. So, what do I do now? Release me, Death said simply. Release me, and let the world return to its rightful state. Allow life to be lived fully, with all its joys and sorrows, its beginnings and endings. You cannot hold on to everything forever. The gift of life is in its transience. With a heavy heart, the soldier nodded. He understood. He had taken something precious, and now he had to return it. Without another word, he took Death's hand and led him to the highest tree in the forest where he had once imprisoned him. The soldier climbed the tree once more, reaching the longest branch, and released Death from his grasp. With a single, final breath, the soldier felt a great weight lift from his chest, as if the world was finally right again. In the moments that followed, life began to flow once more. The soldier watched as the first flowers bloomed in the fields, as people laughed and cried, as time began to pass again. And with it, the soldier felt a deep peace settle within him. He had done the right thing, even if it had been the hardest thing to do. Years passed, and the soldier grew old. He had lived a full life, filled with adventure, loss, and love. One day, as he sat on the porch of his humble cottage, watching the sunset, a familiar figure appeared before him once more. It's time, Death said, a quiet inevitability in its voice. The soldier smiled, feeling no fear. He had made peace with the cycle of life and death. I'm ready, he said. And so, the soldier's time came to an end, but not with sorrow. He had lived fully, and now, in the end, he embraced the natural rhythm of existence. The world continued on, with all its fleeting beauty and inevitable endings, but the soldier's legacy lived on in the stories told around the fires, in the songs sung by the people, and in the whispers of his ruby whistle carried by the wind. And that, dear listener, is the story of the miracle man, the man who learned that life is not about avoiding death, but about embracing the precious, fleeting moments we are given. What a truly whimsical and layered tale. It's filled with contradictions, magic, and the cleverness of its characters. It seems to weave the themes of fate, choices, and the consequences of power, while also hinting at the kindness hidden in unexpected places. As we reach the end, you bring everything back to the storyteller's world, reminding us that stories shape our understanding of the world, influence our present, and even offer hope for the future. The soldier, Anna, the troll, all live on in the lessons we draw from their actions and journeys. The moral, of course, is always open to interpretation. The story's cyclical nature, the endless questions of fate and consequence, the feeling of time stretching out, and how all these tales weave together to shape the world, it's such an evocative blend of whimsy and depth. And the closing invitation to the listener: subscribe, like, share. Good night keeps it light-hearted while still resonating with the timeless tradition of oral storytelling.